Well, welcome back to The Truth Is, the podcast where we peel back the layers of work, life, and leadership to uncover the truths that drive real success. I'm your host, Tash, and today we're talking about something that impacts every single company, whether they know it or not: talent strategy. You can have the best product, the sleekest tech, or the biggest marketing budget, but without the right people in the right roles at the right time, you're not going anywhere. So today, the truth is, talent strategy is business strategy. In fact, according to a recent McKinsey study, organizations with strong talent management practices are 2.2 times more likely to outperform their peers financially. That's no coincidence, y'all. It's strategy in action. And it's no secret that the job market is brutal right now. But whether you're hiring or looking, one truth remains the same. The way you approach talent is the way you run your business. And thankfully, I'm not alone in this discussion today. Joining me is Sam Lee, someone who knows all about assembling top-notch teams. Sam is currently the director of talent acquisition at Zenni Optical, the #1 online eyewear retailer in the world. And over her impressive decade-long career, Sam has been a driving force in growing teams from just a handful of people to over 400 across higher education, tech, and now e-commerce. She builds programs from scratch, designs scalable processes, and most importantly, connects people to their passions. She's also a proud New Yorker, an avid soccer player, a true foodie, and full disclosure, a dear friend of mine since we first met at a little tech startup called Nihilus back in 2020. She's actually coming over for dinner later this evening to debrief on this recording and catch up on all things life. So this should be a fun one, y'all. Buckle up. And without further ado, welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back, I'll say. This is take number 2 for what we tried almost a year ago. Exactly. So I'm very happy to be back.
I can't believe it was almost a year ago. Yeah, we recorded back when I was a newbie at this, and y'all, I did not have the right equipment. It was quite the disaster, but here we are, take 2, as she said, and I am so excited to get into it today. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, Sam, why don't we start off by just telling us a bit more about yourself and your background in the TA space? What first drew you to the world of talent acquisition?
So I don't usually like to go back, but I do want to start with my first job that was working in higher education for my alma mater in their alumni office. I was organizing events to recruit volunteers, alumni volunteers, to give back to the university in whatever meaningful way meant for them. So really, starting in the beginning, it really was talent acquisition, but in a very different form, right? I was meeting folks, learning their story, learning what they like to do, learning their strengths, and connecting that back to the organization. So again, very, very different from what I think of talent acquisition now, but really it was the fundamental skill set that gave me kind of a jumping off point into what I now think of as traditional talent acquisition in the industry. And there was one particular moment. It was actually, we were hosting an event, and we had an alumni volunteer who was a recruiter at Google. And I was just like, hey, like, what do you do? What's your job? And she was like, honestly, I do kind of what you do just for Google. Right. And I was like, oh, of course, that light bulb really just went off for me, you know? So that was really the first moment that sparked my interest into really thinking about what I did back then into something larger.
Yeah, it's interesting how those early roles shape your career trajectory and those moments that you're like, maybe you just stumbled into this and then you realize, oh, I'm good at this, or, oh, this has aspects that I really enjoy, and I can see myself doing this on a larger scale or in a different industry, etc. And you know what's funny? According to LinkedIn, nearly 50% of recruiters say they didn't initially set out to work in TA, but over 80% now say it's their long-term career path. So I just feel like many of us stumble into something and then we're like, this is a good fit. I'll stay here.
Yeah, no, it's so funny. I was going to say that it's such a common thing that you hear from recruiters, like, oh, I did not think about this as a career. I didn't realize this. And somehow we've all stumbled into it and we've just really found our niche of where we like to be. I am a people person as well. I am a talker. So like
No, are you?
This role for me it just worked out really well of my strengths, what I like to do.
Right.
And so starting in higher education and then going into tech industry, of course, where we met at a startup, going then to a pre-seed startup, and then now to Zenni. I never thought I would get out of tech or, move away from tech, but it is very interesting to have a whole new perspective into talent acquisition in other roles. Right?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, too, talent acquisition, HR, that's pretty standard across the industry, right? People are people. That doesn't change. Whether for me, it was healthcare to tech to veterinary medicine and all the way back around. It's like the one thing that is true is that people want to be connected to something they're passionate about, a purpose, a job that they can really thrive and succeed. And I feel like what we both do, I'm a little bit farther removed from the hiring and the talent acquisition side, but I still feel like you can do that across any industry. And that's what's pretty cool about our roles.
Yeah, I've always said a good recruiter, it doesn't matter the role that they're working on. The things that they'll look at, the things that they'll really inspect to improve and scale is going to be the same, right?
Yeah,
the questions
absolutely.
that they ask a hiring manager in a kickoff interview, the way they run their interview processes and how they build those relationships with candidates, that's going to be the same no matter the role.
Well, I think that's a great segue into the next question I wanted to ask you, which was, because of your background, you've worked across different industries, as we just discussed, and you've scaled hiring orgs in all kinds of environments. So, what's something about TA that people don't see or are often misunderstood?
I think a big misunderstanding about talent acquisition is how truly strategic and honestly very complex it is, right? There's an old school thinking that talent is just about filling jobs quickly. And they're not tying really company values, company mission, and company goals into the folks that they bring in. That is an aspect of our job, is to fill a job and trying to do that as soon as possible.
Right.
That is just one facet of the many things that we have to do, right? We truly are, when I say complex, right? We work with humans who are innately complex, right? No candidates and what they want and what appeals to one candidate may not appeal to the other candidate, even if it's for the same role.
Oh, right? Yeah. I know. Yeah. I know about it.
I'm saying right. And I know, but
you're preaching to the choir here, but I think the listeners are going to learn a lot from this conversation. If you're not in HR, if you're not in TA, she may be saying right, and you'd be like, no, I don't know that's right. But tell me about it.
So it's complex, again, because we're working with humans and no human is ever the same, right? In the same vein, we are also very data driven. We have to be. Beyond just typical TA numbers of, time to fill, time to hire, pipeline conversion, we have to think big scale long term too. And maybe this is more so leaders rather than individual contributors, recruiters who are doing the day-to-day recruiting.
Right.
But leaders, we have to look at workforce planning. We have to then be looking at what is attrition from last year and what can we expect for the following year? What are company goals, right? And what is a healthy TA team look like to help hit those company goals and those company growth. Beyond that, we're also having to consider and stay up to date with micro and macro economics that can affect a candidate's decision making. So again, TA is not here just to fill a role quickly and then to move on to the next. Ultimately, yes, that is one of the goals, but there's so many other factors that TA brings to the table and has to consider when working in the work that we do. Right. And ultimately too, we're building relationships with folks. I've always said this to my team and to my colleagues that I'm here to help you as best as I can, as best as we can. Our goal is to help you find the right individual. It's truly not, and again, it's going to be as quickly as possible, but ultimately the focus is the right individual.
1,000%. You just hit on a lot of topics and I'm like, yes, 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 all of the above. People often forget that hiring and your talent strategy is a reflection of everything. Your employer brand, your values, your priorities. If you have a long drawn out process, if you show up to interviews as an interviewer and you are ill prepared, seem like you don't even know that this person is here to talk to you today, all of that stuff is a reflection of who you are as a business. You can't get a first impression back, right? And so people talk, candidates go out to the streets, they are putting it on TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn or any of the following social media. And that will negatively impact your employer brand and finding top tier talent. So it's really important to remember that your hiring and how you approach it really does reflect your entire business journey and who you want to be to the outside world. And then once somebody comes into your organization, who are you then too? Once you've recruited them and told them all of these things, when they join, are you still that same company or did you sell somebody a fake dream, for example? There's also one, Sam, that you kind of touched on, which is that you work with hiring managers to fill roles as quickly as possible. I think that's also another one that people misunderstand is that TA team or the recruiters aren't the ones responsible for that final decision. But I always find that TA teams get the brunt of it when something doesn't go right along the process. And they're just like, wow, this TA team sucks. And it's like, well, actually the hiring manager decided last minute that we're going to stop this role, or they don't know what they actually want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we see it. I think it's funny because we have, in a sense, two clients. Our client is an internal stakeholder, usually a hiring manager, hiring team, but we're also two clients a little bit to the candidate, right? So
1,000%.
in a way, there are things that, and I think for the most part, usually, of course, there's always the outliers of when we pause a role and we're just saying, hey, you know what? The team has looked internally and this isn't this most strategic right role for us right now. Yeah. So we're going to pause hiring. You know, we aren't the decision makers in that, right? There is another factor behind the scenes that is the decision maker for that. We are the messenger, and most folks are very understanding. But again, I know it's a hard market. We have those folks who can kind of go off on us a little bit too. So, it is an interesting spot where we play, and I don't want to foreshadow what I'm going to end this episode with, but we are really consultants for our hiring managers and truthfully for candidates as well. I always say to my candidates whenever I'm interviewing folks of, hey, listen, I'm going to be as transparent with you as possible. I also need a little bit of that in return because ultimately I am your advocate to a hiring manager.
Totally.
Right? And I feel like people are going to come at me and be like, don't always be transparent with a recruiter like XYZ, right? But truthfully, like, recruiting and hiring and interviewing, it's a two-way street, right? It's not just the company and the recruiter and the hiring manager and the interviewers recruiting you. Like, candidates for sure have a say in this as well. And they're just at the same time should be evaluating the company with and we'll talk about this as well, but like interview process, their values, right? It's their, like you said earlier, it's their impression that they give off to you. So interviewing is a two-way street here,
Right.
100%.
Yeah. It's hard though, because sometimes it also feels like a game, especially in this market. You want to be transparent, but sometimes maybe that doesn't get you in the door, or that hurts you in an interview process. So it's kind of a tricky balance there. But I think TA teams, recruiters who are transparent, who take some time to be a human being and to build that relationship, that rapport, that trust, I think it goes a long way. Because I know from past experiences, if I've gone through an interview process where the recruiter was transparent from day one, and I went through the process and then maybe it didn't work out or whatever happened in the end, I still would say, thank you so much. This was one of the best experiences I've had. And I won't forget that. Someone who had grace with me, someone who helped me prepare for a conversation, told me, hey, you're up against one other very strong candidate who has maybe 5 more years of experience than you do. Like those things I will always remember, even if it doesn't pan out. And I think that is something that should stay in TA, no matter how competitive the world is, the market is, so on and so forth.
Yeah, 100%. Again, we're all humans in this world, right? It's a crazy market right now. So whatever we can do to humanize the whole experience of all of this, the better. Right.
Now, we've just been talking about it, that it's a tough market. And we are seeing this across the board: layoffs, hiring freezes, longer time to hire cycles. How have you seen this impact the way companies approach their TA strategy today?
Yeah. The market's been volatile for the past 5 years, really. Since COVID hit, there was the mass layoffs. And then 2021, 2022, there was a boom in hiring. We couldn't hire fast enough, and it was a candidate's market.
Right.
And then 2023, 2024, we go back into layoffs. And now in 2025, we're kind of in like what I think is a weird middle ground where layoffs are still happening, but we're also kind of still hiring. So how I've seen how I've seen companies and kind of what they focus on now is that they've scaled their TA teams back, but given them broader scope. So now recruiters are required to source, schedule interviews, onboard, help with employer branding, DEI. And I will say some, yeah, that's right. I will say though, some industries and companies, recruiters were always doing that, but maybe there were 7 recruiters, right?
Sure.
But now they're still required and expected to do those same things, but there's 3. So companies are just scaling back TA teams and expecting them still to do the same work and same scope. I also think too, there's a shift from, especially the 2022, 2023 hiring boom, there's a shift from quantity to now quality, which goes to the longer hiring processes. Hiring managers, truthfully, and this is again my kind of hot take, I think hiring managers and leaders have lost confidence and are more cautious in who they hire, because no one wants to do a layoff. Like no one wants to do a layoff.
Right.
So I think the longer interview processes are a result of that, because they're more rigorous in who they select. They want more people to interview one candidate, right? To get more perspectives in, to see, is there something I personally missed or someone else missed in the process that we can suss out before we make this hire? So I think it's the shift from quantity to quality.
So then I have a follow-up question to that. That makes a ton of sense to me, that they're focusing on quality, that's contributing to the longer interview processes, et cetera. But does that make companies, and maybe this is larger organizations, even startups are lengthening their processes as well, but does that make them lose out on talent? Because startups, for example, their strength is that they're scrappy, right? So they can use velocity to their benefit or to their advantage. Do you see companies losing out on talent because these processes are so long?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Candidates now, because of the effects of just the market, right? They have to endure longer interview processes and timelines.
Right.
If you've been laid off and when you're in a pinch, you're usually applying to multiple roles, but those candidate pools have been bigger and now the processes have been longer.
Mm-hmm.
And they're losing truly with the longer interview process, they're losing trust in the company themselves.
Right.
Right. So companies are completely losing out on candidates, especially to companies who can still do a quicker interview process. Right.
Yeah.
And you said too, you startups, usually the benefit that they have is that they're scrappy, they can move quick. But I've also heard of small startups who are doing 10-step interview processes with 11 people. So even startups, I think, are losing a little bit of that benefit.
Yeah.
In the same vein, I think for us, it was very common to say, oh, go to a big company because it's a bit more stable. But for the past 5 years, we've seen that not be true either.
Right. Yeah. I actually read a greenhouse stat online that said time to hire has increased by 27% year over year, and over 60% of TA teams report having fewer resources than last year. So this exactly highlights what you just said. We are all being asked to do more with less, and that can be very challenging if you're asked to source, build a pipeline, schedule the interviews, work with the hiring, all of these things. To me, I don't know how companies think they're going to stay competitive and hire best in class talent when usually in markets like the one we're in today, the first to get cut are resources from HR and TA. And then they're like, oh, but we still need to hire and do these other things and bring it. And I'm like, that math just doesn't math. if companies think AI agents can do it all for them, I promise you they're in for a rude awakening, because you need people to do this stuff. An AI agent maybe can source candidates, maybe can do the outreach or whatever, but every single step in this process to have a smooth onboarding and to ensure an employee is successful within that org, an AI agent is not doing that. I could guarantee you.
Yeah, I've always said there's aspects to what we do that AI is making more efficient, and that's great. But ultimately, again, we're working with humans, right? And it's relationship building. An AI agent or an AI bot is never going to be able to replace that.
Yep. 1,000%. And so what about the candidates? We know it's a tough job market for them right now. What should they be doing differently in a climate like this? Any advice for people who are in the job market right now?
My advice to candidates, and this is what I tell my friends now who are in the thick of interviewing, going through the process, I always ask them after every interview that you do, ask the recruiter what the interview process is and when you should hear back from the recruiter about the next step or just any update. If it's not moving forward, just when you should hear back, right? Hold the recruiter accountable for when to get back to you. And if you don't hear back from them by that day, the day they said they would get back to you, ping them. A lot of friends have asked when they're in the process, oh, I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to be
right.
I don't want to bug them. I don't want to seem over eager. And if a recruiter has told you, and truthfully, I think recruiters should just already be proactive and telling you what the interview process is and what the timeline is.
Yeah.
But if they're not getting back to you, that's on them. You pinging them, it's not and should not affect any of the outcome of the decision to move you forward to not.
Right. The follow up. Hopefully the recruiter or that TA team is getting back to you when they say they're going to get back to you. But like we just discussed, they're being asked, like everyone else in the world in any job right now, is being asked to do more with less. And so things happen, right? If you need to get back to, 20 candidates, it may happen that somebody falls through the cracks or you can't get to everybody on your to-do list that day. Mm-hmm. So I think some might even appreciate a little, hey, remember, you were supposed to get back to me. Like, where's the update? And it's like, oh, snap. I didn't even realize that one fell through the cracks. So that is great advice. If you were to ask me that question, I also would tell folks to network, network. It's not enough anymore to just blind apply to a million places because now more than ever, differentiation and personalization matters. I left my full time head of HR role recently, and it's funny because I'm not in the job market for another one per se at the moment, but I always network no matter what. Go grab a coffee, go to that dinner, go to the conference they invited you to, because you never know when you are going to be in the market for a new role and need that. I actually just received a call from a former colleague of mine who said, hey, a friend of mine has this business. They're looking for a head of HR. I thought of you. Are you open to a new role? Like those things really make a difference. And I know it's effort. I'm actually not a super extrovert. People might call me on that. Okay. They're going to say you're lying. I do not really enjoy those social, engagements, especially from a work front. It takes a lot of energy for me to go to one of those events, but I've always seen that it has such a positive return. And so I will continue to go even on a day that I rather stay home and in my sweatpants. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. If I'm on the phone, if I have 10 different phone screens in a day, that's a lot of talking to 10 different strangers. Granted, it's through your phone, it's not face to face, but that's
Right.
still a lot of talking. So I completely agree with you. I am a people person, but there is just some days when you're like, I have a networking event later and I know I don't really feel like going, but I also know I will feel better about it afterwards. It's always, you build it up in your head to be something, and when you actually just go do it, not as bad.
Yes.
So yes, that's a very good point. Network. You're right. In this market, it does. A referral is always brought to the top of the list. It does not guarantee an interview, but it is always brought to the top of the list.
Yeah, I think that's really important to underscore there. It doesn't guarantee an interview and it doesn't guarantee you're going to get the gig even after you interview. You still have to do your part and prove that, you're the most qualified candidate for the position. But it helps in a market like this when they are receiving thousands and thousands of applicants. I mean, most of the time, they just can't even get through all of the applicants. At a certain point, they're like, okay, we're just going to cut it off, and they'll send rejection emails to the second half of the batch because it's like, we already have enough good candidates to work with here. Should anything change, we'll dip into that second half. But this is the reality that people don't see if you're not in the industry. Yeah. And I think that is where people are like, dang, they ghosted me, or I haven't heard back, or I just got a rejection. I applied yesterday. And it just may be one of those things that, you don't know the behind the scenes why. And most of them are not going to tell you that in a generic rejection email.
100%. I mean, even yesterday where I was working on a role, we have 2,000 applicants for this role.
Oof.
And I was going through just looking at candidates, rejecting. And there was one where I accidentally sent the rejection email the same day. And I know I was like, oh man, someone's going to think this is an AI bot that just read their resume. But I promise you, at least how it is at Zenni and all the other companies that I've been at prior, it's someone looking at your resume.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Sam. So then my next question for you is, how do we shift hiring from more reactive back to strategic, especially when business priorities are changing every quarter, or what feels like to some of us every day?
Yeah. Personally, how I have found success is really partnering and having a seat at the table with folks who are making the business priorities or who are changing the business priorities, right? Again, sure. For me, I've been very fortunate at previous companies, even now, to be at the table So I know when changes are happening. I know when priorities are set. I know when they're changing so that I can also be adjusting as well. Right. And I'll say I don't have it perfect by any means of what it should be or the strategic forecasting should be or workforce planning should be. But having a seat at the table, and I feel even kind of bad giving that answer because I know that's not possible for all folks.
Sure.
I would say if it's not possible for you, if you don't have a seat at the table, I would be requesting that information to all of those decision makers and being proactive in trying to get that information.
Right.
Ultimately, because in TA, we are helping the company succeed here. And so the more information we have, the better we can do our job to help the company.
Yeah, 1,000%. And you know what's shocking is that only 37% of orgs say their hiring plan is closely tied to their business strategy. I mean, what are we doing, y'all? I don't understand it. How can we be impactful if we're not aligning our hiring strategy with the business strategy? It actually makes no logical sense to me. If someone wants to reach out and tell me how that makes sense, I'd love to hear it. But that is ultimately how we end up with these multiple rounds of layoffs that negatively affect people's lives and the economy. So I love what you said there. Either build yourself a seat at the table, ask for it, demand it, or put yourself in a position to get that information from somewhere. So behind the scenes, you can ensure your team is aligned with the business strategy. Because at the end of the day, when they come to evaluate in a moment where finances are tight, budgets are tight, they're going to evaluate every single department across the organization. And TA and HR needs to be able to come forward and show data and show numbers the same way marketing or sales or any other organization can do so to say, this is how we are impacting and driving business to the bottom line or whatever it may be. So I think that's great advice. Now, what about companies that are under pressure to do more with less? We heard this from the employee side or from a TA team member perspective, but how do you make the business case for continuing to invest in talent strategy? We said it earlier, HR and TA first to get cut when it comes to budgets. So how are you going to your business leaders and saying, hey, wait, don't cut our budget. We need to still invest here?
Again, I think like you said earlier, it goes back to the numbers and not necessarily just the metrics a talent team is focusing on, but numbers in regards to how you are actually saving the company money, right? If you can look at attrition data and say, you know what, say we had 50% attrition, and I'm just using easy numbers here, trying to use easy numbers here,
Sure.
but say we had 50% attrition. If we can cut that down to 25, what is that actual cost in dollars to the company?
Yes.
Right. So it's still using data. It's still using the numbers, and hopefully folks have a good ATS. They have good data to be able to pull that information. But again, aligning it back to business numbers and dollar amount will say, actually, no, listen, you need my team here. And I've said it to many TA teams before. There's always waves, right? There could be a high point, a low point, a high point, a low point, a high point, all in a year of how many roles we're hiring for. But ultimately, too, we also do more than just the day-to-day recruiting. We are training folks on not just how to use the platform. We're training folks how to interview. We're training folks on unconscious bias, right? All to help be able to make a better decision when it comes to hiring the right individuals. So even if there's a lull in hiring, what else can TA help with when it comes to recruiting and talent as a function?
No, I love what you just said. If I heard it correctly, it's about putting it together in a way that shows the cost savings to the business, but beyond just the cost, it's about the value that your team, that department is driving in the organization. And find in HR and our kind of roles, we don't always have quantitative data to provide. And so I find that it's also very important to tell the right story in terms of the qualitative data. Like you mentioned, you're doing the training, you're doing this, and you're doing that. Those are intangibles that it maybe isn't a number, but if you can paint the right picture to your leadership team, you can show the value that your team is driving in the organization, and that makes a real difference.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, as someone who's been both a recruiter, I have some things in my eyes, y'all, if you're watching this video, someone who's both a recruiter and hiring strategist, what's one red flag and one green flag that you look for in candidates?
It's funny. I was really trying to think of something here, and I wish I had a red flag or green flag that was more aha, groundbreaking. But red flag, and I see this across seasoned folks at high leadership levels down to, intern candidates. Vague answers is a red flag. Vague answers, especially when asked again. And again, I'm telling you, I've seen it again with the highest VP, SVP level candidates, all the way down through individual contributors. But and maybe this ties into my green flag is, I want to, your work and yourself the best. Tell me the story of the things that you've done, right? I see your resume. We all see your resume. We know what's on there already, but tie it together and tell the results.
I love that. Yeah.
It's the storytelling aspect of the things that you have done. And I had like a little asterisk with the green flag too. It's like even better if you can add in the learning lessons that you had with one of those experiences, with the project, right? Of course. Yeah. It's funny. I obviously want to hear the successes. We want to hear the successes, but I also love to hear the failures and where something has not gone right and how it changed how you operate for future. Because it's not just about everything that's gone right, because it's also not realistic.
Right.
We all fail in some fashion. Right. I want to know how you picked yourself up from it, what you learned, and how you picked yourself up and how you move forward.
Yeah, when I was head of people for a conversational AI startup a few years back, we had a culture interview, and that interview wasn't like, how do you align with our values and tell me all the great stuff that you did. It was exactly what you just said. And I structured it in a way which probably made candidates very uncomfortable because most of the questions I was asking were around, tell me about a time that you did not communicate effectively. And they're looking at me like, what? Wait, hold on. I don't know. And it actually makes you think, because if someone is self-aware enough to say, hey, I don't always get it right. Here was a time that I dropped the ball or I didn't communicate with my team effectively. That shows me that you are a well-rounded human being and that you take accountability, and it's okay because we're all human. I'm not expecting to hire someone who's never dropped a ball or who has never made a mistake. Those people don't exist. And if you try to pretend that you're that person, that's a red flag to me. So I would say self-awareness is probably a major green flag to me. And that comes through when you ask questions like the ones that you and I just gave as an example.
Yeah.
Quick sidebar. What's your take on the job hopper debate? Like if you see someone who's gone from place to place on their resume, is that a red flag for you, or do you think we're moving past that?
I have two answers here. I think with the volatile market, you're going to have folks who have been at places for less than a year. That's just the reality that we're in. I think to go back to my green flag though, as long as you can story tell, and I say this to folks too, who are interviewing, or maybe not interviewing, but my friends who are interviewing. It's like, also, is this the right job for you right now in your life? Right? Yeah. Maybe you go into a position and you're like, I can totally do this. And then something outside of work changes and you're like, hey, actually can't can't commit to this, right? And that's
Right.
okay. That is
Right.
totally fine. As long as you can have some type of explanation. I don't want to say storytelling, meaning to fabricate something, but as long as you can have an explanation for moving from company less than a year, whatever it might be, again, we're all humans. It's what is realistic in today's world.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think everybody wants to be on the receiving end of a recruiter like yourself or a TA leader like yourself that has those beliefs. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations are stuck in the mentality when they see a resume and they're like, oh, this person has jumped from here to here. They're probably not going to be a good fit, or they're not reliable, or they seem to be then they must be the problem. Where, in my opinion, what if I have too much respect for myself to stay in toxic environments? What if you sold me a fake dream and it was all rainbows and butterflies until I walked in there and I came into a culture that was micromanagement, belittling, talking down, a terrible leadership team? Am I supposed to just stay there for a year or 2 years or whatever because it's good for my resume? I'm sorry, I'm not going to sacrifice my sanity or my mental health for that. So I would love to see us move the needle forward on this one. Unfortunately, I think you're a needle in a haystack right now in terms of the TA leaders and just organizations as a whole that take a stance on job hopping, etc. But like you said, being able to speak to it, if I have the opportunity, if you look at my resume and you see good experience under those, but maybe they're shorter, at least just give me an opportunity, get on a call with me so that I can explain it to you. And even if someone doesn't ask me point blank, like, oh, why did you jump from here to here to here? That's like my elevator pitch. I already have it ready to talk about. I'm going to come transparently and say, hey, let me take the risk out of this for you, because I'm sure you're looking at my resume and saying, you've only been at these places for short periods of time. What happened here? No problem. Let me explain it to you. And if you're a human, you would probably understand my explanations.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to say, like, we definitely still have to work with hiring managers who have that perspective. But again, it is on the talent team to be able to paint that story and paint that picture on behalf of the candidate to that hiring manager to say, listen, they were at a company, the values didn't line up. They were at a company, they were sold something, and reality was a completely different picture. It is on the talent team and the recruiter to paint that picture and fill that gap for the hiring managers. So it's not even an issue. Like, the recruiter does have the ability to influence hiring managers and should be able to influence hiring managers away from any backwards, outdated thinking, when ultimately it is about if the candidate, an individual, has a skill set and the attitude to be able to succeed in the role and at the company.
Right, because maybe those other environments were not the place that they could thrive and succeed. They have the skill set, and maybe your organization is the first place that they can really settle in and do their thing. So I love what you just said there. And back to the transparency bit that you were talking about earlier, you always take a transparent lens with candidates. I think this is also the very tricky part on the candidates' end. They want to be transparent. And I'm saying I'm including myself in that. I have been on the other end of this and had to speak about my experiences. And it's like, I wish I could just get on the call and be like, yeah, the CEO over there was crazy and, shit was going down and it was toxic AF. Obviously, I can't say that. I can't tell you what was really going on. Like, oh, yeah, there were fraudulent activities happening. They were asking me to lie. Obviously, that's not really a great way to come into a conversation. Yeah. That's the reality of what I was dealing with. But you have to shape the story and the narrative in a way that will be digestible. And funny enough, I usually do that. And then when we get to final round, or if I've joined the organization, then I'll be like, okay, so I could tell you what really went. Now I can tell you what really happened.
Right. I think there's a truth there's 100% a truth to what you said. I think there's a truth to how you frame all of the CEO is crazy. There's fraudulent activity. You can say, or I was asked to lie. I was asked to do X, Y, Z. Things that do not align with your morals and your values.
Yes.
That's it. Me, if I'm on the other end, I'm like, got it. Understood. Right.
Yes, I would hope so. So whoever's listening in here, if you are on a TA or a hiring team or anything like that, this hopefully sinks in with you that it is okay. Just give the person an opportunity to explain and tell their story. You know, mine, if someone looks at my resume, it's a colorful journey that I've had. It's probably why I'm not looking for my next full-time HR role right now, but just let them talk about it. Okay. Now, Sam, what's one hiring trend that you hope never comes back? Something that you've seen people do and you're just like, yikes, that was all bad. And let's not do that anymore.
My answer, I think, still happens. So I don't think it's gone.
Okay.
But hiring managers who are looking for top name universities, the highest GPAs, well-known companies, y'all, we know that's not it. There's so many things. And again, it's not completely gone. So that's why I feel like I'm kind of cheating a little bit. This mindset is not completely gone, right? Yes. There is definitely still old school thinking with this. It goes back to recruiters being able to say, hey, listen, this person has done X, Y, Z, and this is how much it helped the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how you also build diverse teams. And we know that diverse teams from different perspectives, different locations, different school of thought, build stronger teams and build more successful companies.
Period.
Point blank.
Yeah. That part. I love it. I just think about, dang, maybe that's why I got rejected from so many places, but I'm kidding. No, they're going to be like this girl from the University of Houston with a 3.7 or 3.5 GPA. Ugh, not good enough. You know what? Well, then I don't want to work for you anyway. Okay. Okay. Well, I told y'all this was going to be a fun one. I don't know about you, but I've had a blast with this conversation. It's been a joy. But before we wrap up, will you indulge me in playing a quick little game I like to call Hot Take on Talent, True or False Edition?
Oh, yeah.
Guys, what a good sport Sam is. I knew she wouldn't be able to refuse me on this one either. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to present you with a series of statements about talent acquisition, and you'll say whether each statement is true or false. I'll give you a ding, ding, ding if you got it right, and you'll get it.
Oh, these are like research fact data stuff.
Don't worry. It's not like 32% of the, it's not going to be like anything like that. General statements that you're going to say true or false. And if you get it wrong, you're getting it. And then I will follow up whether it's true or false or whether you've gotten it right or wrong. I'm going to follow up with a brief reasoning for whether that's true or false. Okay. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Here we go. First up, true or false? Quote unquote, soft skills are increasingly becoming more important than technical skills in many industries.
True.
Ding, ding, ding. That's correct.
I saw your face and I thought you were going to give me the wrong sound.
Dang, I'm also trying to keep my face like not telling you which one it's supposed to be. And the explanation for that one is that as automation handles more technical tasks, soft skills like communication and leadership are becoming more crucial in organizations. All right, next up, true or false? Using AI in the hiring process can completely eliminate bias.
Using AI in the hiring. Oh, false.
Ding, ding, ding. That one's correct as well, because while AI can reduce certain biases, it can also introduce new biases based on the data that it's being trained on. All right, next up, true or false? It's better to have a lengthy hiring process to ensure you find the perfect candidate.
False.
Ding, ding, ding. Dang, Sam is good at this. While thoroughness is important, y'all, overly lengthy processes can cause you to lose out on top talent to competitors, as we discussed earlier in this episode. Okay, we got a couple more here. True or false, a diverse team has been shown to be more innovative and effective in problem solving.
True.
Correct. The explanation is that research indicates that diverse teams bring a variety of perspectives, which enhances creativity and problem solving. All right, last two. True or false, onboarding is just as important as the hiring process in ensuring employee success.
Oh, true for sure.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. That is also correct because a thorough onboarding process helps new hires acclimate quickly and perform better in their roles. And lastly, true or false, high-performing employees are always the best fit for leadership roles.
False.
She got them all right, y'all. That's good stuff from Sam Lee. High performance in a current role doesn't always translate to effective leadership, which requires a different set of skills. So that is false. Woo! Let's give it up for Sam, y'all. Snaps, claps.
How exciting.
You're such
I
a
was
good
a little
sport.
nervous. I was a little nervous.
Did I have you sweating?
A little bit.
No, you crushed that. Thank you for indulging me. And finally, Sam, I close out every episode by asking all of my guests to answer this same question. If listeners remember only one thing from this conversation today, what should it be? And bonus points if you can frame it in the truth is format, meaning the truth is ... finish the statement.
The truth is, talent acquisition is a business critical function, not a fulfillment arm.
What? It's a business critical function, not a what?
Fulfillment arm.
Fulfillment arm. Write that down. Rewind if you have to. Write it down. Keep that in your brain. I like that. That's so good. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Yes. And Sam, if listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn is the best way. Send me an email if you want to request to connect. Add a little message of how you found me. I will do my best to get back to everybody. My inbox is slammed, but I do my best. But yeah, I would love to connect.
Oh, yeah. TA folks' LinkedIn inboxes are nightmares. Thank you so much. We will include Sam's contact info in the episode description. And Sam, again, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your incredible insights with us. You're an absolute queen, my friend, and I appreciate you. Keep crushing it in the TA space. You know, I'm always cheering you on. Zenni's lucky to have you.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you, and see you for dinner.
Oh, yeah. Dang, I got to go get prepared. And to you, our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of The Truth Is. Remember, companies who treat talent as a strategic function, not a transactional one, are the ones that win. Because the truth is, talent strategy is business strategy. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave a review, and share with your friends. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps the content of these episodes. So you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, Natasha Bukhari, PHR, or send an email to ttiwithtosh@gmail.com. Until next time, y'all, stay awesome, stay authentic, and above all, stay true to yourself. This is your girl, Tosh, signing off.